Okay, so hello everyone. Ali Azzeddin from 4th Generation for Education, session number 7 today about inquiry, and I wanted to finish the day with some art. And I love art. I'm passionate about art. And look, Liz, we're having people watching from Qatar, from the UAE, from Lebanon, from Peru, from India, from Denmark, Thailand, South Africa, Kuwait, and I think the list will be a very long list. So remember to put all panelists and attendees, plenty of artists or art teacher or maybe homeroom teacher joining us today. We will know a little bit more about this in a few seconds. Liz, I'm so excited to have you today. And let's know, what did you prepare for us?
Excellent. Well, thank you for the invitation. It's nice to hear people from all over the world are joining. I have been a traveler myself for quite some time. I have been very fortunate as a Canadian to live from the East Coast to the West, which is not a typical thing for Canadians, and have lived on 4 different continents across the world. South America was the place that inspired me to travel, along with being an expat child in South Korea. But Peru is the one place that I still dream of going to. So I'm very excited to hear that someone is joining us all the way from Peru. It's amazing. I am a visual arts specialist teacher at an international school in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. And I currently teach grade 4 and 5, but I usually, over previous years, taught grade 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And Raha International School, where I teach, is a very diverse school with a very multicultural community. And I teach in the PYP, which is the primary years program of the International Baccalaureate program. So that's a little bit about me. And in the IB, one thing that we do is we teach from a trans-disciplinary standpoint. So rather than teaching art exclusively in a fixed mindset, I try to make connections across the curriculum. So
Liz, do you want to tell them where we met the first time?
I was going to do that. Let me backtrack a minute. The reason that I'm here and talking about art is really definitely because Ali is passionate about art. He led my colleague Mark Ryan and I in a face-to-face PD about arts in the primary years program a couple of years ago. And I date back further than that because when I joined Raha International School, well, it was 8 years ago now, I took an online course to get myself into knowing what the IB was all about. And Ali was a facilitator on the course that I first took. So I've been connected to Ali for over 8 years now. And it's really amazing to keep crossing paths with him. And he recently was a guest on our sped up chat with.
Yes, I'm so excited. So today I had people who trained me long time ago, and I had speakers that I trained. So, and this is the beautiful of the connection, the networking, and staying in touch. So I'm really excited to listen to you, Liz, and to learn also from you this afternoon.
Yeah, so some of what I'm sharing today is directly inspired by being trained and taking PD with Ali. So I wanted to start off by a little bit of a provocation. I would like to know what the first thing is that you think of when you see this shape. And, oh, sorry. Wondering if your perspective is based on something real or imaginary when you see this shape that's about to appear, whether it's connected to a personal interest, or does it remind you of an experience? This is an activity that we do each year at the very beginning of the year to get to know our students. So when you see this shape, a chevron shape is one of the ways it's described. Does it make you think of something real or imaginary? Does it connect you? Do you think of something that is connected to a personal interest or an experience you've had?
So I launched the poll, and then we have plenty of poll today for you. So stay tuned, and I'm going to give you a few more seconds, and then I'm going to share the results with Liz. So what is the first thing that this shape makes you think of? Perspective based on something real or imaginary? Is it connected to a personal interest, or does it remind you of an experience? Few more seconds, the poll is on the screen, and then some people, they are sharing other ideas in the chat, Liz.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Okay, good. So I'm ending the poll, and I'm going to tell you 65% of our attendee, they said something real or imaginary. 15%, they said it's a personal interest. And then 20%, they said an experience. So where do you want to take us next?
Well, I think that I'm going to share with you some of the responses from our children at school. And if I play this little video, you'll see some of their artworks appearing. This is something that we usually do with our students at the beginning of the year to get to know them. And you can see from their artwork, many of them connect to things that are real or imaginary. And one of the things that helps us to get to know them by doing this activity at the beginning of the year with all of our students from early years right through to grade 5 is knowing we get to hear stories from them. And when they tell us that the shape reminds them of a tent and the experience of going camping over the holidays, or it reminds them of their favorite thing that they like to draw, or something like boomerangs, like you saw. It helps us get to know our students. And this last one that it finished with, Superwoman's Gem, the other thing that happens in terms of connecting to inquiry is from this provocation, it gives students sort of a jumping off point. It's so open-ended. They can connect it personally to anything that they wish, and it sparks ideas. So often the original shape that we ask them to incorporate into their artwork disappears as they go on a journey of inquiry themselves. And so to get to know you a little bit better, Ali has put up a poll asking what your role is, just so that we know how many people out there are subject special arts teachers as well. And across.
So I put the poll when you were talking about the activity, and it seems we have 40% of our attendees today. They are art specialists like visual art, dance, drama, and music. We have 9%, they are other specialist teacher. 42% they are classroom teacher, and then 10% they play different roles. Maybe you can put in the chat what is your role, and let me say hello to Mark, and remind him that he needs to put all panelists and attendees in that chat so everyone can read the comment that he's sharing with us. Okay, Liz, so.
I am really glad to see that there are classroom teachers here, not just arts specialists, because I know that teaching art in the primary school often falls to the homeroom teacher. And
so we have an MYP coordinator. Hopefully we will inspire them.
Good, good. I'm hoping next year to take my PYP experience into the middle school and high school, where I'll be changing roles next year.
Interesting. So. And we have many preschool teachers. I invited them to come, and because I'm sure they will learn something.
Good, good. I hope so. Excellent. All right. So I'm going to go on to the next slide here. And I'm not sure, do I close there?
We can see it, yeah, it's working.
Yep, okay. All right, so I have an interesting kind of bit of information to share with you, which is that when I was a child, I absolutely hated art. And I was one of those people who thought, I can't do art because I can't draw. And I still surprise my students all the time by saying, I hate art. And they say, Miss Lise, but how can you, I don't hate art, drawing. And they say, how can you not like drawing and be an art teacher? And it was because of my experience when I was young and this sort of preconceived idea that art is all about these fixed images that we have in our mind. And so I'm really passionate about connecting art to the other subject areas and focus my teaching rather on teaching through art rather than explicitly about art. So I'm glad to know that there are homeroom teachers here, because one of the best ways, I think, to deliver the arts curriculum is to connect it to the other learning that you're doing in mathematics and language and social studies and everything. So that is really what this webinar is all about. So even though I'm going to be taking you on a bit of a tour or giving you a peek into my classroom, which is lessons that are specifically for visual art, I hope that you'll be able to see the connections being made with other subject areas. The first thing I want to do, though, is share the key questions with you that we're going to be focusing on in the webinar. So how do you shift your mindset from inquiring about art to inquiring through art? So really, when I say that, what I mean is when you're thinking about teaching art, rather than thinking about trying to teach skills and techniques like observation drawing or how to hold a paintbrush and those kinds of things. It's really, especially in the primary school, more about inquiring through art. And I think that that can help people overcome some of their anxieties that they may have when it comes to having this on their plate. And then how do authentic and purposeful lessons facilitate student agency? So thinking about voice, choice, and ownership, so that students can really truly inquire in their lessons. And before we go any further, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with what we think of when it comes to inquiry. So again, I'm coming from the IB perspective. I am Canadian trained and I do have UK teacher qualified status. So I have taught across different curriculums in different countries. But in the PYP, the inquiry is defined in this way. The spirit of inquiry is a really important aspect of it, I think, especially as a subject specialist, not thinking I'm just teaching art. And in the IB, we have what's called the learner profile and teaching people and students about being an inquirer and thinking and doing and asking questions and having them wonder. So as I give you some insight into my practice, I hope you'll see how students have voice, choice, and ownership over their learning. And keep an eye out to see how I go about helping students to explore and wonder and ask questions. And do I get them to collect data? And is that a part of art? I think so. And so I just want you to kind of have a bit of an idea of the perspective I'm coming from and how we look at inquiry. And I hope that fits with your thinking. In the lesson I'm going to start out with to show you, it is connected to a unit of inquiry that we call, it's about where we are in place and time. And I'm going to take you through this lesson that is connected to something I did with our grade 4s recently. The focus of their unit is on, I'm just going to backtrack here. It's actually an inquiry into exploration. That's the conceptual lens that they're focusing on. But it's a very science-based unit that they do in their homeroom. And it starts out with some explicit teaching about the solar system and making sure that they know about the basics of the solar system. And so to kind of start this off, I did a provocation with the students, asking them the key question about what they know about gravity and how artists may be inspired by gravity. So I started out my lesson saying, right, today we are connecting art to science. And at the beginning of the school year, I often have students, when I say we're doing maths in art or literacy in art, or if we are doing some writing, they'll say, Ms. Lise, why are we doing literacy in art lessons? And so we talk about how they're all connected. And I was so pleased at the beginning of this lesson when I said, right, I want you to write down in your sketchbook, gravity. We're going to start out this lesson watching a brain pop video about gravity. And I want you in your sketchbook to show me what you know already about gravity by the way you write the word. And so it brought out all of their prior knowledge as a launch point. And it was incredible the number of ways, and you'll see a few examples in a couple minutes, of how they wrote gravity. And then we watched this brain pop video, and it was a great way to see how many students already had a lot of prior knowledge and how many students were able to make connections with learning they had done in previous years to do with forces and things. And I asked the students while they were watching the video to do some sketch notes and record the key words and key ideas through symbols and images and words as they watched the video, so that they were really actively listening and building their knowledge or just reinforcing it. And then I introduced them to an artist named Rocky Byun, who is from South Korea. And another really nice thing that happened in the lesson was that I'll share this video with you, but when it plays, he is speaking in Korean and the video is subtitled. And the students were just so fascinated. In the classes where we had Korean students, everyone was asking them, can you understand it? And the students were just so proud to have their language being shared in the classroom. And not one of them complained and said, I can't understand. They were able to follow along with the text. And I'll share this with you. And it was just to get them thinking about the fact that artists are inspired by scientific concepts like gravity. And then we created some sculptures. So rather than focusing on the elements of art exclusively and talking about sculpture and form and these kinds of things, we really talked about how you can inquire into concepts like gravity when you are creating a sculpture. And so considering your materials is really important here so that students can, they can see real life, a real world context, but they can also be stimulated by what you're giving them. And so I had some newspapers and bottle caps that I gave them to create sculptures with, and they had time to explore and create a little sculpture themselves that I asked them then to title and photograph and then reflect on. And in all of my lessons, I always try to make a very explicit reflection. Sometimes students don't actually write a detailed explanation, but at least they're being exposed to thinking about their learning and how they're going about learning. So I'm going to give you some examples of this lesson in detail so that you can see what input I gave the students and the kinds of ways that the language that I used. And I started again the lesson by asking them, was saying gravity is a force, but have you ever thought of it as a source of inspiration? And let them know that this is something that artists over time in different places around the world have explored in their work. So I'm going to play this. It's sort of a snapshot of an online lesson. All of my lessons at the moment I am embedding in video format so that students who are at home can work with them. And I'm also giving the same message to each class. I teach 10 grade 4 classes at the moment. And so by embedding it in video, all the students get the same instruction, but the outcome is very different from class to class. So I'm going to share this lesson with you.
또 지나가는 거 소품 볼 때마다 중심을 생각하고 이게 될까 이런 사람들이 상상할 수 없는 중심 잡기를 계속 찾아오려는 거예요. 그래서 능력이라고 생각합니다. 제 이름은 라키 변입니다. 저는 밸런싱 아티스트입니다. 어떤 경우는 하나 위에 하나는 누구나 다 쉽게 할 수 있지만 하나 위에 3개, 4개, 5개 그것도 굉장히 다양한 모습으로 변해 있어가지고 그런 복합적인 중심 잡기 이런 거를 제가 보면 아무리 어려워도 중력이라는 걸 거스를 수 없어요. 그거를 이용해서 제가 중심 잡기를 합니다. 우리가 보통 보면 되게 급하게 살고 있잖아요. 그다음에 우리가 또 살면서 좀 느리게 살자 이런 얘기 많이 하죠. 중심 잡기를 하고 나서부터 모든 거에 대한 결과를 낼 수 있는 사람이라고 긍정과 확신을 갖고 있기 때문에 그렇게 된 것 같아요.
For millennia, people have been balancing rocks to mark pathways and signal special locations all around the world. We love stopping and taking the time to try out this challenge of defying gravity. Over time, gravity has inspired artists in different ways. Sadamasa Motonaga, the Gutai artist from Japan, created these sculptures of water suspended in plastic that only hold their form because of gravity. When the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi is built, you will be able to see this painting by the artist that he created using gravity. He placed the paints on the canvas and tilted them until the paint moved across the surface and formed this design. This week, in an attempt to defy gravity in a creative way, gather some materials like newspaper or pieces of paper that you can tear up and crush so that they are like a stone. If you have some stones at home, you can try this just like you saw in the video. So form some stone-like shapes and try your best at balancing them to create a sculpture. In Canada, we call these inukshuks, and they are usually stones formed into a design that looks like a human figure. You can combine any materials and objects that you wish to try to balance and create an interesting composition with. You could use items from your pencil case or any other found objects. As you endeavor to find balance in your sculpture, think about what the Korean artist Rocky Byun said about balance in life as well, and how important it is to be mindful and really pause and focus in the moment and enjoy what you're doing. Slow down. A very important skill to have when you are trying to create these sculptures is perseverance. Try and try again until you get it just the way you like. When you do, photograph your sculpture from different perspectives. Be careful not to knock it over. And choose your favorite photo to upload onto page 1 of the activity. Then experiment some more. Can you defy gravity? On page 2 of the activity, take a minute to reflect on the learner profile attribute, balanced.
So in lessons, I really try to make connections, again, not just explicitly with art techniques and language and vocabulary, but what we call in the IB the approaches to learning skills. So about self-management skills like states of mind, how through art can students develop perseverance as an example. And so that's kind of a nice one. And you can see as well, I always try to make personal connections, because if the students know me and my family better, then they will be more open to sharing with me more about themselves. And then always making connections to local and global scenarios as well, so that students really can make their own personal connections with it, okay? So that was the input that the students were given. And I just wanted to share with you what they created in response to that. We have at the moment at Raha some students who are learning at home, and the majority of students who are face-to-face learning. And it was interesting to see how this lesson was very accessible to students at home as well. And I wanted to mostly showcase to you the reflection that they completed. And so what does it look like and sound like? There's an example of their gravity page in their sketchbook, perseverance, and with those materials you can see the excitement on the kids' faces where they're really doing things and in the moment responding to music cues. One girl was listening to the music I played and she picked up her pencils like chopsticks and started moving the materials with that. Getting them to title their sculptures was really important. And these were their reflections as well. balanced is, like inquiry, an attribute that we work on developing in school. And by asking them to reflect on how they're showing being balanced at the same time as balancing also helps me to see students who view balance as something that's literal, as opposed to balance in their lives and managing their state of mind while they're creating. And I had a few students who, when we got to the end of the lesson, they hadn't photographed anything because they said, well, it didn't work. And I said, well, still, what have you learned from that? And they were still able to reflect.
I had emotional management because I was really excited for how to do it and how it would turn out. And when it actually started working, I was really happy. And that's why I was I had emotional management. And how did you use the self-management skills to help you stay balanced and enjoy yourself when creating your sculpture? Well, I use a lot of mindfulness because I breathed in and out slowly so I don't bloat away. I kept my breath. It was very difficult because I was really happy and had emotional management, and I use my I want to connect these two because for me I am able to connect them because I was mindfulness and I was mindful from my emotional management and my perseverance. I had a lot.
That was my favorite. I finished the activity without screaming. So this obviously connects to lifelong learning, I think, and developing a joy in the process of learning. And so by bringing the students to this point of reflecting on their attributes as a learner and the skills that they're developing, it really changes the focus from art-specific skills to transferable skills that they can take across subject areas as well. So again, through art, they are learning about form and sculpture. They're learning about artists and the way we connect and communicate in the world. But they're learning these sort of bigger picture things. And the other thing that I try to do as well is make my planning open and flexible so that I'm able to embrace teachable moments. I had a stack of newspapers that a colleague had delivered to the art room, and I had this huge collection of bottle caps. And at the moment with the pandemic, I'm very aware of the materials that I can hand out and what to do with them. So I purposely gave the students materials they could then put in their bag and take home with them and continuing inquiring with. And it never occurred to me in this unit or in this lesson that newspapers and bottle caps would be such a source of fascination. And so it added this other layer to the inquiry that I hadn't predicted that really connects with the theme where we are in place and time. The students, when I handed them the newspaper, said, "Where did you get these from?" And one of the girls was opening up one piece, and then she picked up another piece and realized how the newspaper physically fit together. So the other thing about inquiry is choosing your materials carefully, but also being ready to embrace these teachable moments that are unpredictable as they come up. And the way that I know I'm facilitating voice choice and ownership is when I look at a snapshot of what the students have created. They have all been given the same input. They have all been given the same starting point materials to work with, but the outcomes are completely unique, and their reflections as well are very individual. So rather than just asking them, were you successful or not, or can you describe the elements of art in what you created, they've gone so much further and deeper through this open yet guided inquiry process. So at this point, Ali has another poll for you. This is a listing of the different kinds of things that what inquiry teaching looks like. And I wonder in the poll if you can share with us which of these approaches to inquiry teaching do you find most challenging? And I hope you were able to identify some of these approaches to teaching in that lesson that I've just described. Maybe some of you were on Sonia's webinar first thing this morning about provocations, and you could see a little bit more of an example of the process of and what a provocation can really bring out. I have 1 hour per week with my grade 4 students at the moment, which allows me to kind of go a little bit deeper and have longer conversations with them, which is how I was able to fit that many things into a single lesson.
I'm looking at all the answers, and then I'm giving for the people a few more seconds. And let me tell you, Liz, in the chat, you got so many wonderful and beautiful and inspiring examples that we started with. So I'm going to stop the polling here, and I'm going to give you the top 3, okay, that they found most challenging. So we have the first one, applying concept to deepen conceptual understanding. 28% they said this one. Exploring, wondering, and questioning is the second one with 18%, and then 13% for collecting data and reporting findings.
Okay. Given that, we were going to do another poll at the moment to see what direction you'd like to go for the last part of this webinar. So I wonder if actually we should, I'll give you a little bit of a heads up. So Ali was going to give you a poll and say, would you like to go with option A and find out about how I took the grade 4s through a logo design inquiry connected to their unit on how we organize ourselves, and which was where they were learning about businesses and designing businesses. And in the art room, we designed logos connected to their business. And the key question was, how can you inquire through art into the concept of ethics? And it has some connections with UnGlobal goals and culture. The other option that I can take you through is specifically about drawing, because that is the stereotype. So how do I go about teaching drawing to my students when I am not passionate about drawing myself? I'm more of a 3D person. So how do I go about it being a reluctant drawer myself? And it focuses, again, a little more on the approaches to learning skills and how your state of mind helps you to develop drawing skills through inquiry. So look at that. So, I can tell, if you want to know more about concepts, I should talk you through logo design, but I will honor the poll and take you through my drawing lesson.
So the winners are like 58%, and maybe the numbers will continue to increase, 59. If one more will join, maybe we'll become 60-40. Yes, 60-40. So I wanted to model with Liz also agency and giving you choice online. And that's how we said, okay, we have 2 units. We can talk about the logo design, or we can talk about the drawing. And as you know, because of the time, maybe we can invite Liz another time to share the logo design unit with the people interested in this one. And modeling best practices. So for all the people who are asking, how do we do it online? This is a way of doing it online, and then giving the choice using the poll or any kind of feature on the platforms that you are using. Shalini is saying, wow, even here we are experiencing voice choice and ownership. Yes. So when we talk about it, we need to model it. And so I'm happy that you are seeing how we are modeling it in this online environment. So option 2, Liz, it's for you. If you want to paper the slide to go to option do,
I
and
will
then we can continue.
Yeah, I will share that I did create a Padlet, and on the Padlet are some examples of things connected to, or I can add more things to the Padlet specifically about the logo design as well. So, and it came first, so you will have a quick glimpse into this logo design. But I'll jump to sharing the planet. So super quick, our grade 5s they just finished a unit called Sharing the Planet, inquiring into the concept of responsibility really was the key thing they were looking at. And in this lesson, like all of my lessons, I actually I connect to the UnGlobal Goals to bring about more inquiry. And so the key thing that, I'm wondering is, how do you help your students find their voice and make choices and take ownership over their learning in art? And so I wanted to take you along the journey of a student from their perspective. Now, when it comes to drawing, I really try my best to avoid situations where I say, this is how you draw. I really view it like learning mathematics. So when you are learning partitioning, there are 10 different strategies for partitioning numbers and adding them together. And each student has their one strategy that works best for them. It just clicks for them. And so that was how I designed this unit. I wanted the students to create art for advocacy and create an artwork that would help to share with their audience a message that they had come to feel passionate about from their inquiry into the impact of human actions on ecosystems. So I asked them at the beginning of the unit as well. I gave them the choice. I said, do you want to learn to draw inspired by this inquiry into ecosystems, or do you want to look at sustainable, recyclable artworks? And we create inspired by materials, found materials. And every single class voted for drawing because they're in grade 5, and that was also very predictable. So this is a short video taking you through the lessons. I started out using, we have Seesaw in our school, in the primary school. And I find that a lot of students now really are into digital drawing and tools and materials, but they always think they need to use a different program. So I teach them how to do digital drawing on Seesaw. And then we did a little bit of cartoon drawing. And at each point we reflected on our state of mind and talked about how it's actually perseverance, emotional management, self-motivation that are the kinds of things that help you to learn to draw. So we looked at tracing and things. And then I got to the point where I asked them to choose which style of drawing they preferred and materials, what specific global goal they wanted to connect to. The rubric was completely based on the approaches to learning. So there were no details specific about drawing techniques in the rubric. It was really all about, were you able to try different things? Were you able to persevere and develop social skills? And so when I design rubrics and self-assessment tools, I might have a checklist related to art-specific techniques, strategies, vocabulary. But when it comes to the assessment, I'm always looking back at the concepts that we're exploring, like responsibility, or in this case as well, now I've forgotten one of the other concepts that we're exploring in this unit. But that's where I bring the rubric to. And so that was a student's journey through drawing and sharing the planet. What they then did after they chose what style of drawing they preferred was we uploaded them all to a Padlet where the students were able to give feedback to each other, and I was able to give feedback. And we looked a lot about the art-specific skill of observation, which is also a research skill. And by sharing their artwork with each other within the class and across the different grade, across all 10 classes, they were able to learn from each other as well and build further skills. And by asking them to critique each other's artwork and make suggestions, it again gave them a different way of looking at the art rather than only zeroing in on theirs, which they usually only see the negative side of. They focused on the positive side of the drawings of their classmates. And so to extend the inquiry and build their skills further, I shared the work on a Padlet, and what they're going to work towards is taking their final artwork and connecting to the UnGlobal Goal. They are going to create a very short, either a still artwork with a short written message in English and translated into their home culture language, or one of the languages they're learning. So they all learn Arabic at our school as well. So if they only speak English, they can translate their message into Arabic and then present this for Earth Day that is coming up. And so they've been working towards this, but again, what is the point of learning to draw? And so we really focus on the fact that it's a form of communication like any other form of literacy, and to bring purpose to them and help them to be more motivated as well. Rather than it just being art for art lessons' sake. We're going to share it as an exhibition that we share with their parents and the school community to celebrate Earth Day. So they really have this sort of big endpoint. So this was an example of one student who really struggled with his drawing, and through lots of conversation and scaffolding, he was able to move away from traditional drawing techniques where he had a picture in his mind to just embracing and using the digital tools that he felt confident with. So I hope that's a little bit of a glimpse. Again, this is all on the Padlet, and on this Padlet, there is a video that takes you through all of the actual lessons that you're welcome to take and use and adapt and modify yourself. And so to end us off, we just also wanted to finish with a chat, letting us know what 2 things you think you might try to do to shift from inquiring into a subject specifically, and instead using it to guide inquiry and inquire through the subject. And thinking about the spirit of inquiry, this is where being a subject specialist, you really have to have an open mind. So as an art teacher, or music teacher, or drama, often you're only thinking about your subject specific skills. But by using inquiry, you can go deeper into the concepts and thinking about responsibility, which was the key concept we were looking at through this grade 5 lesson. But in the chat, are there some things here that you think specifically would help you shift from being, blinders on to more guided inquiry?
So using the release model for myself after this session. And then in the chat, from the chart you are seeing on the screen, please send us the letters. So we were not able to do a poll because in a poll we have only 10 choices. And then here we have letters from A to T. So K for Shalini, Q for Tanya, and then taking more responses. People are still reading. Again, another Q from Rosa.
Seek new perspectives. Okay.
Yes, H and N, H again. Collect and analyze data as a result of inquiry questions.
That is something that Mark and I do as often as we can. I have an example of that from the grade 4 logo design unit. We collected data. I collected data that I'm then going to use as a provocation for their last unit of the year about how we express ourselves. And so we did a survey at the end of that unit looking at all of their logos that they designed. And then we just asked them to vote which one stands out the most. And so that will be our provocation later in the year, using that data to then ask them, well, why did these particular artworks get the most votes? Is it, the color? Is it the message? And so I have a number of examples of using data in the art room as well. And again, linking that to research skills.
Good. So I think we had plenty of letters coming in the chat, and we can continue, Liz. We still have approximately 15 minutes. We will have a time for the Q&A, and I have a small sharing for them. So.
Okay. The final reflection here, this is just a snapshot from a Zoom session, looking at that shape from where we began. The key things that I would say is just always have that big picture in mind when you're collaborating with your colleagues. As a specialist subject teacher, you're very much on the outside of things. But if you are teaching art as a homeroom teacher, just always have that big picture in mind. If you're asking students to learn how to draw, why are they learning to draw? Is it connected to improving their research skills and becoming more observant? Is it to develop perseverance or resilience? Is it to develop social skills and you're going to have them create a collaborative artwork together? Another thing is to focus on the process, not just the product, by inquiring through a subject rather than just about it. And so in the art room, we always have a sketchbook going, and that is a record of the process. So they're always reflecting and recording the stages in the process so they can then look back at it. And when it comes to assessments, the assessment is never focused just on that one end product. It always is connected to the buildup of it. And then facilitating opportunities for students to share their voice, make choices, and take ownership over their learning. So again, you can see in those lessons, I don't tell them, today we're going to learn how to draw a dog, or even, do you want to draw a dog or a cat? And I will show you. I do not feel that my role is to impart my skills and knowledge on them. It's to facilitate opportunities. Whenever they say, Miss Lise, how are you so good at drawing? You say you don't like it, but you're so good. And I simply say, I'm old and I've done lots of practicing, and making sure that they're open with me. The other thing that I do a lot of so that they're encouraged to share their voice is they know me very well. And I try to make the lessons personal, and I share stories about what my preference is. And one thing that I've found has been a real benefit of the online learning is embedding my lessons in these videos. So far more often now, I am actually, I'm going through the process myself. And so I can find ways, it just allows me to connect even more connect more strongly with them. And then keep it authentic and purposeful, again, by always asking why, that big picture, why are we doing it this way? Why these materials? And constantly you asking yourself why, what is the point in this? And asking the students as well, and encouraging them to question. So are there some questions you want me to address, or do you want me to backtrack and go through the logo unit and concept-based inquiry?
I will go for the questions, and then if you don't mind, Liz, stopping sharing the screen, I will show them our new website, a new event, and then I will start asking the questions. So for everyone, you started maybe watching us today at 9 a.m. in Dubai time. This is almost like 7 p.m. here, and I know many of you watched many webinars. This is our surprise for today. We have a new website for you where you can find all our free courses. We have some asynchronous courses, paid courses, and then we have some live workshops. You can also join our team of trainers if you are a trainer, and then put on your agenda 22nd. Yes, we need to fix this. 22nd of May, our bilingual education day. So we will be speaking in French, English, Arabic, maybe Korean, Liz. So we can value all the languages. And then you can see also all our new workshops between now and June. They are published. And then, as I said, some asynchronous courses. So the recording will be published on the YouTube channel for all the people who would like to see this. And then we have the Padlet that Liz would like to share in the chat. So if you want to have a look at the resources that she prepared for you. And then Liz here, I'm going to ask you, Carla, she asked, do you have any book, blogs, articles that you recommend about art and for art teachers?
Mm-hmm. So I've shared a few things on the Padlet, a couple of Andy Vasily is someone who is really, he's a PE teacher based in Saudi, and he delivers some training as well about transdisciplinary learning from the subject specialist perspective. So there's a link to a podcast with him and some details that gives you a sort of shows a little bit about planning. And I've shared the Padlet link. Oh, sorry, let me try.
You shared it only with me.
Yes. There we are.
Okay, I have another question. So this is the Padlet link from Liz where you can find some resources. And then I shared our YouTube channel where you will have the recording, the Facebook, and our new website. I have a second question for you. Can you please recommend how to use art for storytelling in early years?
Yes. Okay. A couple of years ago, this was with a grade 1 class. We used to always do a literacy-based unit with the early years group. And two things. There's this one book, a poet that I really love, Shel Silverstein, and he has a collection of poems called Don't Bump the Glump. And they're really excellent for visualization. So we chose 3 poems from that book of poetry and read them without showing the students the illustrations that went with them, and asked them to interpret the poem and create an artwork connected to it. So that was one thing that we had done. And then as a follow-up to that, so the children listened to the poem, created the artwork, and then they shared their artworks that they created. And the other students, they had to see if they could identify which poem the illustration connected to. And so that was a really interesting way of seeing how well they were communicating. So again, thinking about connecting to concepts and key skills and attributes like communication. Another thing we did was there's this story called Fortunately, Unfortunately. And we connected it to a little bit like the shape inquiry that we do at the beginning of the year that really tells us a lot about how confident students are with inquiring. The story starts out, fortunately, something happened, unfortunately, something bad happened. And it just goes back and forth. And so we created books with students where pairs of students wrote parts of the book, and then we put the whole thing together. And what unified the book was the shape and what they turned the shape into throughout the story. So that was another example of connecting storytelling with art. And so a lot of sort of visualization techniques. The other thing as well is at the beginning of lessons, because I have an hour now, I always start out with at least 5 minutes of free drawing. With some classes, it turns into 30 minutes because it turns into a storytelling session. And so I'll ask the students to just free draw whatever it is they're into, interested, what have you. And it's a way of breaking that, there's nothing worse than staring at a blank page. What do you do with that blank page in front of you? So we dedicate this time to overcoming that challenge. And what I do is I go around the classroom with my iPad. We're really lucky because we have projectors that we can screen mirror to. So I'll screen mirror the students' artwork up on the screen at the front of the room, and they will tell us about their free draw. And it is an oral storytelling session most of the time. They don't describe just what they drew, they describe the story behind their image. So that's a constant, regular connection with literacy, and it sparks great discussions and debates in the class as well. One other thing I'll put in the chat is I'm not a big YouTuber, but I do have a number of lessons uploaded onto a YouTube channel. So you can look at those. I don't have all of my lessons because a lot of them are so specific to our students and what they're doing in the moment. They're not very transferable. But there's a bunch of videos on there connected to some of what I've spoken about today. So the videos to do with learning about logos and stuff.
Okay, I will take one more question from Roma. She's asking about integration and standalone. And let me here put a kind of a all the options are possible, yes. Roma. So it depends when you are in the POI working on the same central idea. This is what we recommend, and this is the integration. Now you have another layer of integration. The teacher is using a central idea, but then you are using the same concept or the same ATL. It's a different level of integration. And then step number 3, you create your own standalone unit and you develop your own central idea. So all depends on which lens you are using for the integration. We encourage authentic, real integrations, not the forced one. Yeah. Right?
Yes, I definitely have changed my practice over the last 5 years to integrate with each unit. And often what will happen is the way the units are placed, I can just move from one to the next. So I know where I'm going by the end of the term and what 2 units they're working on in homeroom, and I will just transition from one to the other and start the skill building in one, and then do the further inquiry in the second half of the term. So I try to always connect with what they're doing in homeroom.
Specific number of integration, there is nothing about specific number. Each school has its own way of integrating and doing the through art, about art, or teaching art. I'm going to wrap it up here. Yes, you can connect with Liz via Twitter. We shared her Twitter handle, and then Liz, you can also put it in the chat if you would like also to share your email. They are asking about your email. Ramadan Kareem, yes. So next week we are starting the holy months of Ramadan. So I'm trying to take a kind of a short break, and then I will see you after Ramadan, after the Eid, for our bilingual day. Stay tuned. Look at our Facebook page for all the upcoming events, and for all our French speaker, we have many things also coming for you. So Liz, again, thanks very much. A lot of positive feedback from the session. I really enjoyed listening and collaborating also with you. Have a nice afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.